Turbulent. I can't think of many words more fitting at the Lightfall year than that. From a miserable, disheartening launch to a lively, promising conclusion, this year of Destiny has been an emotional roller coaster to say the least. Today, we're going to talk about it. I'm going to share my thoughts, and we will surely have a civil discussion in the comments. This is the Lightfall Retrospective. What is there to say about Lightfall that hasn't already been said? The campaign has been the internet's busiest punching bag for the last year and a half, and for good reason. The story made little to no sense, with even the biggest loreheads being left to guess on what the Veil even was. Strand, while a fun and intuitive subclass, felt shoved into the story, which just led to things being even more disjointed. I would also primarily call Guardian ranks a failure. On paper, building a path system for new players is nice, but if your foundation isn't steady, the system will crumble. Destiny needs a serious new player update before Guardian ranks can shine as a guidance system. Also, and this is going to be a hot take, add some more PvP to the ranks. Mastery of the game should include all aspects. Kick out the commendation scores, those are mundane, and make your players need to visit the lighthouse instead. Also, stop gatekeeping mods behind ranks. That's just silly. Root of Nightmares was hilarious, which I don't think is the reaction Bungie was looking for. I remember being at work the day that it started and trying to watch it when I could, and being shocked that it was done in a mere 2.5 hours. Most of the encounters are nothing to write home about, but I'll leave those criticisms for another time. That being said, there were some positives to come from Lightfall. I think Lightfall really shone with all of the quality of life changes it introduced, primarily with in-game loadouts. I honestly can't even tell you how I managed my builds before this point, so the convenience that it offers is really, really awesome. Like I said, there isn't too much to say about Lightfall that hasn't already been said, so I don't want to stay on it too long. Let's move on to our first season of the year. Season of Defiance was okay. I don't know, that's alright. Personally, I did not love the Defiance story. If it were up to me, Amanda would have died right at the beginning of Lightfall when she should have, and this season would have been more focused on Aramis and the Witness. I hate that we get a fake out death in Lightfall so we can get a reveal that she's alive, only for her to be killed for shock value 4 weeks later. And that's another problem I have. Weeks. I won't spend too long complaining about the seasonal model because I've already done that in a separate video, but I wonder if Bungie's stories would have had better reception if they were formatted around an immediate release instead of drip feed. Weekly content drops are fine, but when every week is a copy and paste of the last with new holoprojector missions, they all start to blend together. On the bright side, this season's core activity was not horrible. Defiant Battlegrounds was my favorite iteration of Battlegrounds to date, but I guess that's not saying much when you line it up with its predecessors. Either way, it was in a cool environment, I felt like the pacing was pretty good, so it was alright for me. In terms of loot, there was a lot left to desire. Perpetualis was cool, I guess, but nothing else really grabbed me. I honestly didn't even remember that Vergla's Curve was a real exotic until I started writing the script, and the sad part is that it's not even the least memorable exotic from this year. Overall, Season of Defiance was mid. No further comments, Your Honor. Now, don't flame me for this in the comments, but I actually really like this season. Is that even a hot take? I don't know. For starters, the story was actually interesting, something that Destiny doesn't always get the luxury of hearing. Learning about the Witness was obviously the highlight of the season, but I found the rest of it to be mostly engaging. Titan's return was obviously a big deal as well. It would feel a lot more real if we could actually access the patrol space, but if the intent is to remove seasonal content at the end of the year, I can see the logic in not bringing it back just to have it removed. Season of the Deep's gameplay loop was also surprisingly good. Salvage is your standard match-made arena slot, but Deep Dives put a new and unique spin on things. Choosing how far you escalate the difficulty and receiving loot that reflects your choices is a pretty amazing system. The loot itself, though, was once again pretty bad. Spare rations was neat to me and definitely my favorite among the drops, but that was mostly because I never had one before they were sunset and I just kind of wanted to play with it. Everything else was pretty forgettable. Aside from Centrifuge. Centrifuge was by far my favorite exotic from this year. This is probably the first time I've completely grinded out a catalyst for an exotic during the season it came out. This weapon is so much fun, and even if it's not a meta pick, I have to recommend picking it up. And of course, we have to talk about Ghosts of the Deep, what I consider to be a mostly inoffensive dungeon. Yes, the intro sucks, we all know this, but the second and third encounters make up for it. In my opinion. Not yours. You can disagree if you like. Moving on. Season of the Witch was nothing special. For the most part, I think the story is good. The concept of it is just wacky, as most things are with Eris, but I actually felt decently engaged for the majority of it, right up until the ending. While the final cinematic in the main story was awesome and helped build some anticipation for the future of the game, I just wish we got to see more of the aftermath. Eris just talked us through the events of Savathun leaving and Zerorath losing her connection. While the story was mostly good, the gameplay loop was certainly lacking. The concept of the trading cards was a cool one, but I can't say I interacted with them that much. I got the 5 cards that I thought were the best, and just sort of stuck with that. Like I said though, it's a good idea, one that could potentially be built on in a future release. Both arenas were pretty standard, and even though Alters tried to innovate on things, I wasn't a crazy fan. Loot-wise, things were a slight improvement. I enjoyed Kept Confidence early on, even if it lacked the necessary range to do anything effectively, and Eremite served as a pretty decent solar fusion. I just feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, yeah. Exteris is one of the weapons I've ever used. It does some amount of damage. It looks like a weapon from the Destiny franchise. I'm sorry guys, I'm really struggling to find nice things to say about this gun. To wrap things up, we gotta talk about the Crota's End revamp, my personal highlight from this season. For the most part, I enjoyed it. I do have some problems with the Chalice mechanics, but I'm gonna save that for a future video. For now, let's move on. I used to shit talk this season, but now I think I kinda actually like it. Now don't get me wrong, Wish's story was pretty terrible. Once again, I think this is mostly due in part to the drip feed model. The story really just felt like 7 weeks of waiting with some minor story beats here and there. And I'm really hoping that episodes improve on this problem. What I'm trying to say is, the story was really boring. The story is where most of my complaints end, fortunately, because Season of the Wish gave us one of the best seasonal activities of all time in the form of the coil. The coil is not only fun to play, but it is rewarding. Single runs have filled my Postmaster before, and finishing a full platinum run gives just so much stuff. This is one of the first times I'm going to be truly sad to see a seasonal activity leave. Star-Crossed was personally not my favorite exotic mission. That's it. That's all the commentary I have on that. On the other hand, Warlord's Ruin was a really fun dungeon. I can't say that I ran it that much, but I do love it both aesthetically and mechanically, and in particular, I really love the final boss encounter and just how mobile things are during that fight. This season, the loot was actually kinda good. Scatter Signal makes for an amazing rapid fusion, Subjunctive arguably outclasses Aquilos, and Dragon's Breath immediately became a viable damage weapon. And of course, we can't talk about Season of the Wish without talking about its epilogue. Crow falling into the Traveler and dueling our very own Cade 6. Honestly, I really wish this cutscene was the first time we saw Cade again, including promotional material. I know he's a big chunk of selling the expansion, but god damn, the reveal would have been so cool. And that's it. That's all the seasons. Or is it? With Season of the Wish being extended to 6 months, it only made sense that we'd get an extra content drop to cover some of the dead space. While Riven's wish quests were nothing special, Into the Light can only be described as the complete opposite. Even if it's not a formal season, I feel like it's only fair to call Into the Light the best season of the year. In terms of quality, it was on par, if not better than most seasons in recent memory for me, and it's free. I know it just got dumb praising the coil, but Onslaught is a close second in terms of best activities, at least to me. 50 straight waves of increasingly difficult hordes of ads is refreshing after years of copy-paste seasonal activities. The loot incentive for Onslaught was also a high point of praise for me. The Brave Arsenal, with 1 or 2 exceptions, are bangers throughout. Not only is the loot good, however, the loot structure is also near flawless. I love the attunement feature that was introduced with Into the Light, and I hope it makes a return in future activities. The only real complaint I had with Onslaught was the drop rate of tokens, but even that was improved with time. I feel like now is a good time to remind you that this was a free content drop for all players. The thing is though, that's not even the end of Into the Light. Pantheon dropped midway through the release to damn near universal praise. Maybe I just love raiding, but this activity is the most fun I've had in Destiny in a really long time. Pantheon blows anything else in the game out of the water. With escalating difficulties, valuable loot drops, and insane cosmetics, it feels unfair to even compare Pantheon to other seasonal activities. By far, my favorite encounter over the 4 weeks of doing Pantheon definitely had to be Riven. This was the first time I've ever done the fight legit, like tons of other Guardians, and the process of grinding the fight, slowly making progress until we finally broke through and got the clear, was some of the best Destiny I've ever played. It takes me back to my early days of Destiny when we spent 6 hours fighting Callus to get my first raid clear. The rush and the high you get from the clear is just so hard to replicate. Let me remind you again, free to play. It's a shame to see Pantheon leaving when the final shape launches, but I'm optimistic that it'll make a return in the future. Hopefully any feedback Bungie has gained from this period can be used to improve future iterations of the activity. Personally, there are 3 things I want to see if it returns. 1. New cosmetic rewards that rotate seasonally, similar to seasonal Ascendant emblems for competitive PvP. Put some ships, shaders, or exclusive armor ornaments in there while you're at it. 2. A new guildable title. Godslayer is good on its own, and players should be recognized for achieving it during this time. But if we bring back Pantheon, we should give players the chance to earn a new title that can be gilded each season. And 3. More encounters and modifiers. Make the encounters rotate seasonally, just like Nightfalls for Conqueror. You could also use this as an opportunity to bring back or update Sunset encounters. Personally, I would love to see Callus and Galron in here. free. Sometimes, I think it's hard to look past the failures of Lightfall when thinking back on this year, and for good reason. Lightfall was cataclysmic, and it destroyed a lot of faith that longtime players had in the franchise. However, I also think it's unfair to say that the entire year was terrible, because we had a lot of good moments. Between getting our hands on Strand, learning the origins of the Witness, taking on a newly threatening Crota, crushing through the coil, and fighting on the streets of the last city, there are a lot of high points from the last year, if you ask me. If you're watching this the day it came out, the final shape comes out tomorrow. I won't pretend to know what its quality will be like, but I'm pretty optimistic with the way things are right now. I think Bungie knows they're at the finish line. I think they're going to deliver a story with that in mind. We'll just have to see though. Thank you very much for watching.